All right, good evening, everyone. We will adjourn the Board of Education closed session, reconvene the Board of Education open session, calling it to order at 7:12. Mr. Hammond, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, let the record reflect that for roll call, all are present except for Mr. Wong, who is excused tonight. We had a closed session. We discussed the items on the agenda. No action was taken. Board agenda discussion, presentation items for the order of business. Do we have any changes to the order of business? All right, then I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the board meeting of May 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Huff, please take the vote.
Board Member Lockerbie?
Yes.
Board Member Travanti?
Yes.
Board Member Hammond?
Yes.
Board President Gilliland?
Abstain.
Motion carries 3-0.
All right. Do we have any board member reports tonight? I will just say for my report that last meeting I was in Egypt and had the opportunity to visit a kindergarten class in Egypt. It was very informative and exciting, and to see those teachers in their Muslim dress teaching in a classroom with about 55 or 60 students in the 116-degree heat and no air conditioning. I have to hand it to teachers all over this world as they lead our kids in all the things they do. So that was fun and exciting, but I'm sure glad I'm not a teacher in Egypt. Moving on, report from the superintendent, Dr. Therosian.
Thank you, Board President Gilliland, members of the board. First, I'd like to congratulate all the graduates of the class of 2019. Annalisa, you are far more, this wasn't the greatest picture, but it was a joyous moment. So I just wanted to congratulate our student board member as well. Jared, we will be able to graduate, to celebrate next year. We also have a new doctor in the house. And whenever we have the opportunity to hear from an expert, somebody who has really the latest research in educational matters, we like to hear from them. And so I think I'm going to ask Dr. Kaiser to introduce our new doctor.
President Gilliland and board, I am delighted to introduce to you tonight Dr. Erica to come up and to share with us her dissertation. She graduated this year on May 9th, 2019 from the Rossier School of Education with her doctorate in educational leadership. And we're so excited to have a new doctor in the house. Take it away.
Thank you, Board President Gilliland, members of the board, Superintendent Therosian, Cabinet, and members of the community. I'm excited to be able to share with you what I have labored over for the past 3 years in terms of my dissertation work on school boards and the California Voting Rights Act. So I have to summarize my research in about 5 minutes, so I'll do my best tonight. So the purpose of my study was to explore the representation and decision-making practices of school board members in relation to the California Voting Rights Act. So my research really looked to see the intersection between representation and policy at the school board level. So one of the things that I looked at in terms of the California Voting Rights Act was looking at to see the method in which that we elect our school board members, what impact does that have on the diversity of our boards? So there are traditionally two ways that school boards are elected. One is at large, where all members of a community vote for the seats individually. And then you have by trustee elections, where each zone or each kind of district in a school district would vote for one particular seat. So like, let's take Braddock's, for example. Braddock's would represent one particular seat, Mayflower another. But here in Monrovia, we're at large. So I wanted to look at how do these election systems impact how people are represented in terms of the community. So here this is something that's been a hot topic lately. If you've been hearing CVRA, California Voting Rights Act, a lot of districts have been switching from at-large districts to by trustee elections. And they've been doing this in a very proactive manner. So we have a neighbor, Covina Valley Unified, which recently switched their election method and saw an increase in the representation of people of color on their school boards. And so this is an example of what that redistricting process looked like. So my research questions very quickly looked at the relationship, again, to the change in at-large districts and by trustee elections. And then I wanted to see, in terms of the California Voting Rights Act, what did the implementation look like from the perspective of school board members across Southern California? And then how does the identity of school board members impact the way that they make decisions? And so I had a mixed methodology. And so what I did is I had a quantitative analysis where I analyzed all school boards across California. So that was like 925 school boards that I looked at in a pre and post California Voting Rights Act. So the law was passed in 2001. And so what I did is I looked at what representation looked like for Latino board members prior to its passage, and then after, up until 2017, the latest data that we had. I also used a database with the Latino Voting Rights Project. And so that data was able to help me. So I paired together two very intense data sets. One that was looking at how many districts switched over in the 17-year period, and then if there was an increase or decrease in the number of people who were represented on school boards. And so I did this a long statistical analysis that I won't go into tonight. And then I had a qualitative portion where I did 8 semi-structured interviews with lots of different people from board members across Southern California, looking at to see what were their perspectives on how the California Voting Rights Act is impacting their school districts. Because it's a very hot topic that a lot of boards are grappling with in terms of how to approach and how to address this issue that has been come up. So some of the main reasons why this research is important is because this has a great fiscal impact on districts. And so when districts who are deemed are in violation of the California Voting Rights Act by either community members or local advocacy groups, there is a strict timeline that they must follow in order to be in compliance with the law to change their election practice. So there are lots of different ways that a school board is able to take that action, whether that's petitioning to the state board of education and applying for a waiver. They can put it up for a vote in the community, or they can bring a demographer and do an analysis and risk assessment to see what are the best next steps for this community. So my findings for my first research question was that when you switch to by trustee election methods, you increase the number of Latinos who are elected on school boards statewide. And so the reason why this is important is that because statewide, we have about 17% of school board members who are identified as Latino, while over 50% of our school age population, our students that we're teaching, identify as Latino. So there's that huge gap. And so by switching to this election method, you increase the representation of the voices on the school board, where they're understanding the issues that are facing the community because they now reflect the demographics of what our school system look like. My second research question really looked at the perspectives of school board members and what are the challenges that they're seeing in terms of the implementation of CVRA. There were 4 key themes: gerrymandering. And so school boards are being tasked with working with demographers to draw their own lines. And so it's very important that boards take caution in ensuring that it's being done in a fair and just manner. There's a lot of fear because when you have to reorganize your boundaries, you can potentially end up losing your seat. And so I interviewed several board members who lost their seats in the process, and that brought a lot of difficulties and challenges for their community as well. Civic engagement, we know that it's important. Voter turnout is extremely important in terms of increasing representation, and so that was another theme that emerged. And then the ethical considerations that board members must take as they continue to draw their lines. So this was a quote that emerged from my findings about redistricting being very intrusive because it threatens school board members' seats. And so naturally, no one wants to lose their own seat that they have fought very hard to they've campaigned for, they've earned. And so this California Voting Rights Act and the boundaries in how we navigate CVRA need to be taken with lots of caution, but also be proactive in terms of doing what's right and what's deemed best for the community by the members. And then my third research question discussed how does the identity of a board member impact their decision making and how they view and perceive how they represent the community in which they're serving. So they talked about how their ethnicity plays a factor, their background, their professional and personal background, and then how they navigate culturally relevant decision making and ethics in terms of how they analyze each of the issues that is brought to the school board. And so in sum, my research really focused on diversity and increasing the diversity in how elections and structures can either impact and increase and empower communities or do the opposite. And so it's important that we have lots of diversity on boards because ultimately we want everyone who's in our community to be able to have a voice and a seat at the table. So that's my research in STEM. So finally, for my recommendations, so it's important that districts are proactive and evaluate the nature of CVRA in their own district and community to assess if there's a risk for possible litigation. There's many different districts that have experienced this all across our area, even our neighbors. And so it's important that the board looks at and assesses the risk. Thinking about community oversight, how can we involve community members? And if there is a reorganization at the board level, how can we empower community members to have a voice? Increasing civic engagement of communities, so making sure that voters understand the impact of CVRA and being able to have increased voter turnout, and then looking at other ethnic groups, women, and the differences in CVRA between smaller districts and larger districts. And so looking at CVRA also as a model for other states, because this is the next step in terms of how California has looked to address the disparities with representation across our communities. So thank you again, members of the board.
Thank you, Erica. Dr. Silva has been serving our district as an instructional specialist, teaching our teachers to be excellent in their instruction. And next year, she is going to embark on a new journey as she's been hired by Coatson to serve at Monroe School as a mentor to the teachers at Monroe Elementary School. We are so proud to have teachers like Erica Silva in our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. I'm sorry, but I have a question because, well, this is good information and it's timely. Does the 2020 census make an impact or have an impact on any kind of planning that districts might do? Is that something that came up?
That wasn't a finding that emerged, but I would say that redistricting in general tends to be able to, you can see the shift in the demographics of the community, and so the 2020 census may play a role in how districts decide to shift their lines, but also the analysis of the historical elections in a district. So looking and seeing, how many people of color have been represented on a school board in the past, 20, 30 years, because that's what advocacy organizations go back and look at. And they also go back and look at what is the demographics of a community and what is the demographics of a school board. And so if those demographics have been shifting recently, then that would empower a board or a community to make sure that they're taking proper action in order to hopefully address any of the issues that arise.
Dr. Silva, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. You talk about diversity and representation and diversity. It sounds like you're talking about ethnic diversity. I'm wondering if you looked at economic diversities, because when we want representation for everybody, we want representation for everybody. So there are the ethnic way to look at that, and there's the economic way to look at that. Did you include that? Was that part of your study, and having people from all levels of our ethnic community, of our economic community?
So in terms of my sampling, I took districts that were large and small in urban and suburban districts, districts that have high poverty and districts who are more affluent. So I did make sure to include that in my analysis, but for the scope of my specific study, it focused just on ethnic representation. But my next steps in terms of what I'm going to be continuing to research is looking at how representation affects women, and then looking at how it would affect other factors in terms of economics and things like that.
But the actual Voting Rights Act, is it only on ethnicity, or does it include all underrepresented classes?
So it comprises what would be deemed a protected class. And so that includes race, it includes gender, and whatever the Voting Rights Act defines that as.
Well, but that was my question. What does that define? That does it define religion and
Yeah, religion, race,
gender identification,
Correct.
as well as ethnicity?
Correct.
Okay, because it's often portrayed just as an ethnic issue, not as a protected class issue. So.
Correct. And so some of the prior research focused on specifically minority representation. And so for the scope of my study, that was all I was able to focus on within the amount of time that I was given to accomplish this feat of completing my dissertation. But that's definitely some of the recommendations that I had moving forward.
And obviously you did it well, since you're now a doctor.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I have something. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You quoted a statistic of 17% of the board population in California are of, and forgive me because I don't remember how you phrased it, but was that of color or Hispanic?
Latino.
Latino,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Where did you get that statistic? Because I'm kind of curious about that.
From the National Latino, sorry, the NALEO.
Okay, so the Latino board member caucus, was that it?
Correct.
Okay, and so they keep data on
The National
members?
Yeah, so they have the official roster of all people who are registered as or who identify as Latino within their database. And so that was data that I obtained from that organization and a professor who I worked with on the study.
Okay. I'm just curious about that because I'm one of the newer board members here and I'm Hispanic, but I'm not a member of that group.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering how if that number is really accurate, I guess is what I'm challenging.
So what I had was the most recent data from about 2016, 2017, and so any newly elected board members would be outside of the scope of that data set. But they're consistently adding. So if you're not a member of NALEO, I would encourage you to do so because they're constantly adding and updating their database based on the identity of board members and how they connect with the organization.
Maybe you can give me a contact because I've emailed several times and with no response.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned several times the Latino community. Did your research for people of color include African American, biracial, Asian?
So for the scope of my study, I only focus on Latino board
Just
members.
Latino.
Correct. Yes.
And the reason for that is because a good dissertation is a done dissertation.
Absolutely. They compared it to taking a twig from the branch of the small leaf on the tree. So I had to really hone in but further research, there's been lots of research on many different ethnicities and backgrounds of board members. So, but for the person I studied was just focused on Latinos.
Thank you so much.
To you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good job, congratulations. All right, we're ready for public comments. Board of Education encourages public participation. If you would like to address the board, please fill out an addressing the Board of Education form and give it to Ms. Huff. First, we'll take public comments for items not on the agenda. In compliance with the Brown Act, items not on the agenda legally cannot be discussed by the board tonight. We welcome your input, but are limited to asking clarifying questions and gathering contact information. Items requiring board discussion or action will have to be calendared for a future meeting so that all interested parties may attend and provide input. Do we have any cards for items not on the agenda?
Yes, Board President Gilliland, I'd like to invite Dirk Beecham to the podium. Where is he? There he is.
Hello, how's it going?
Good.
I'd like to read a letter. I even gave it a title, Santa Fe Middle School, a positive note. I wanted to take time to say something positive about my child's 3 years at Santa Fe Middle School. All too often, people only speak up when issues go wrong and are silent when things are running smoothly. I want to take this time to thank the teachers, Ms. Graham, Ms. Harold, Ms. Jimenez, and Ms. Kendall. There's also Mr. Galvez, the much-beloved science teacher, and let's not forget the Grammy Award-winning Mr. Ellis, the music teacher. I was very impressed with how tight the students played during the open house in the band a few weeks ago. I was very impressed. It reminded me when I took music in middle school from Mr. Tyndall at Jefferson Junior High School, which is now Gabrielino High. And San Gabriel High is Mr. Wayne Horde, another one of my teachers. But enough about that. The teachers, and there's many other teachers that I forgot to mention here, but are also very good. I want to thank the staff, Assistant Principal Ms. Esquer, Counselor Ms. Oldenburg, Office Manager Ms. Sandoval, and then Ms. Orozco in the attendance office. I won't try to pronounce his last name, but everybody knows him as Dr. Z. I learned he even has a reputation at other schools from parents as proactive, that he tries to get on top of issues early, and this I believe is true. Anyway, so I want to say thanks to Santa Fe Middle School and to the Monrovia Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate all the positive things you had to say. Ms. Huff, any more cards for items not on the agenda?
Yes, Board President Gilliland, I'd like to invite Chris Blanton to the podium.
Just received a letter tonight that I requested on the 22nd. So my notes are kind of out of order. Regarding remarks on the Brown Act, I have a legal firm here that states that you are able to answer questions briefly. If you would like to see it, I have it. It's from a law firm that tells boards how to comply with the Brown Act. So your statement didn't sit well, so. Okay, today received letter requested on 5/22. Part of letter details constraint on time and resources. Just prior to me speaking on the 22nd, during the public comment, the computer head of Santa Fe not only spoke longer, but he used the video and your board there, which was denied to me, which is the reason for the letter. So your claim of video and other technology during public speaking is disproven. It's on tape. The guy before me in public speaking used the video. And yet you're telling me that I'm not denied that it's not allowed. So how's that possible? You look at the tape of on the 22nd, you'll find that that's true. Okay, 6/13, 19, got a call from Shoshana to pick up the letter for reason of refusal of using the equipment. I told her I'd be there next day. Went the next day, she was off, and no one in this office had any knowledge of the letter. So thanks for wasting my time. You don't call somebody, tell them the letter's ready, and then no one knows anything about it. On 5/24, I had a meeting with Miss Lynn. Her secretary, Kristen, sent me to Clifton to appeal suspension with Mr. Glass, who refused appeal. Went back later that day for a meeting with Dr. Kaiser and Lynn, who viewed videos start a fight, said investigation be started. It's now 6/12. I have no word on what happened. So we're 2 days short of 3 weeks. No comment?
We will make sure that the administration understands your concerns, are continuing to accept legal counsel, and have all your contact information.
Okay,
So
also,
my understanding is, from what you're saying, and administration is in contact with you about this, so.
no one's been in contact. We're 2 days short of 3 weeks. 5/24 is not 6/12. So, also, no response to the request to remove slogan world-class schools for world-class students. Provided figures during the last meeting indicate, in my opinion, this is misleading at best. Shocked at statement by Mr. Hammond that this isn't show and tell, deny use of video, which would be detrimental to school board's vision of their schools. Key to the Brown Act is to treat everyone equally. Letting the computer school head show pictures and deny me is not uniformly and consistently applying policies and procedures. Also shocked that a school board member would flippantly compare a student being beaten to show and tell. Mr. Hammond. Misinformation from Mr. Hammond regarding the Brown Act in a prior meeting, I believe it was the second appearance of me, when he stated they could not comment on the public speakers or answer questions. Government Code 54954-2, one exception to the Brown Act is board members may respond briefly to statements or questions made by members of the public during the public comment period. This is paraphrased, but I have paperwork showing that. Also, the board can't prevent the members of the public from making disparaging remarks, which can come into play. It's too late, but hopefully changes will be made to provide a safe and nonviolent atmosphere at Clifton in the future. 2 years of trying by appearing here haven't made it any safer to attend. And this is directed specifically to Mr. Hammond, but is applied to all. Using the Urban Dictionary, in my opinion, this is a dog and pony show. Feel free to look it up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards?
There now.
All right, we'll take public comments for items that are on the open session agenda, either now or at their place. Do we have any comments for items on the agenda?
There now.
All right, then I'll take a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
We have no items to be changed from that, right? All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Huff, please take the vote.
Board Member Travanti?
Yes.
Board Member Hammond?
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie?
Yes.
Board President Gilliland?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, then we'll move on to action items. As soon as I get this page to turn. We'll move to educational services. Dr. Kaiser, Local Control Accountability Plan.
Thank you, Board President Gilliland and Board. Tonight, we are going to share with you the Local Control Accountability Plan revision for the year 2019-2020 and the summary of the document. The document's around 300 pages in length, and so we'll summarize it in a cool little 5 minutes. To start with, our local control accountability, known as the LCAP, is based on the 8 state priorities. And these are the 8 state priorities: basic services, which include a highly qualified teacher in every classroom, textbooks in the hands of every student, and clean and orderly and safe buildings for students to attend school in. The implementation of standards, parent involvement, pupil achievement, all falling in the purview of school, pupil engagement, school climate, how students feel about coming to school, course access, and other pupil outcomes. So these are the priorities that are set forward by the state for us to be mindful about as we budget all funds in our district. So the process for planning our LCAP, we have several different avenues that we look for input. We seek community input, and we present many of our ideas and our findings to the DAC and the DLAC, which is a parent meeting that gathers with parents and staff. We've used the Thought Exchange as a survey instrument to survey our community and a staff survey. We have LCAP strategic planning meetings in English and Spanish. And the purpose of all of this is to review and to analyze the past year's strengths and areas for growth so that we can make those adjustments moving forward. We spend a lot of time looking at the data and the survey results to inform our practice. This is a picture of what is encompassed in the LCAP, which is the custodian of the entire LCFF. And our total budget for our district is $65,820,626. And then you can see our supplemental and concentration dollars moving forward next year are $6,141,597. This actually represents a $450,000 cut in the supplemental and concentration dollars moving into next year. And so as we looked at this year, we really looked at the actions and the services in terms of what was working, what wasn't, and we had to begin to eliminate that $450,000 expenditure pieces moving forward. So what does the budget look like? This is a pretty good visual of where the dollars go. The largest slice of the pie, 35.5% of our dollars in the supplemental and concentration go to support academic programs in the district. And then you'll see we have another large slice for college and career readiness. Knowing that we are truly preparing students to step into a world for them to be successfully independent and to be tomorrow's leaders and tomorrow's workers in our workforce is very important to us here in Monrovia. And to that end, in this area, Dr. Catherine Rial has worked tirelessly to develop career pathways at the high school and our early college program, and then the counseling services to help students make really good decisions. And to that end, you'll see the mustard-colored pie slice. That's our counseling and student support area, which does several things. And one of them is that selection of courses and helping to identify students' academic and vocational interest for them to make decisions in high school about what they're going to be doing in college or in their career, as well as our students who fall into crisis. So this pie slice represents that. Then you'll see that we have district professional learning, Ed Services Department oversight to oversee all of these programs. Our iCoach program, which assists in technology development in every one of our schools, and Code of the Future. We have a true commitment to educational technology and visual and performing arts, and then our site allocations to support their school plans. So we look at where are our areas of greatest progress, and as you look at this chart, you see that in the area of our suspension rate, we have a green on our dashboard, and that means that we have been successful in reducing our suspensions, and using other means of discipline actions. The other area that's nice and green is this English language arts area. So our ELA programs have been deemed to show growth and for us to have a good status there. Another area is college career. So these are our three strongest areas appearing on our dashboard as we look at our progress. Looking in the areas of our greatest need, we see this area of chronic absenteeism being orange. And so we're really looking at how do we help our students get to school? What do we do to engage our students so that we can close the gap on that? And another area last year that was orange was our math area. The Smarter Balance scores have been coming in regularly since the students finished their testing, and we've been watching those scores like you watch election returns. And what we're seeing in the area of math is we spent a lot of effort looking at math and in math instruction, supporting teachers, asking some difficult questions, practicing our interim test that mirrors the Smarter Balance test. And as we're looking at the returns, we're seeing some really good growth. So I'm expecting that piece of our dashboard to not be orange this year. We will see that in a little while. That's my expectation. So our LCAP with our supplemental and concentration dollars is divided into three major goals with lots of sub-goals under each one. And the first large goal is student achievement. As we look at student achievement, and you saw that our English language arts was nice and green, in the last 5 years, we have been working in our grades 6 through 12 with the expository reading and writing course. And that expository reading and writing course, when it was first introduced in our schools, the students complained that it was too hard. Teachers thought that it was difficult to teach because the kids weren't following along very well. But we stayed the course. And a couple of years ago, when we adopted a new ELA program, the secondary teachers came to us and they said, please don't get rid of the ERWC, which is the expository reading and writing course, because they were seeing the benefit from it. So that's been core in our secondary programs. In our elementary schools, the schools have been working very diligently in the areas of readers and writers workshop and guided reading, and teachers have been receiving lots of support to get these pieces in place with our instructional specialists and with the Coates and Foundation dollars that have come into our district. In math, we've had coaching and professional development for our teachers, and we've been really looking at the state framework. What does the framework tell us to teach? And again, instructional specialists have been working diligently within the district. Our second goal is third grade literacy, and you may think that's rather narrow, just third grade. What it truly represents are grades kindergarten through third grade, leading up to third grade as a pinnacle, helping our students to become literate youngsters by third grade. For those students who don't make the mark by third grade, we do have intervention programs moving forward. And we also have intervention programs in the primary, as each elementary school has a full-time interventionist on their campus. But we focus in on helping every one of our students succeed in literacy. What does that look like? Knowing that you have to be able to read and write to make it in this world. And our third goal is student engagement. And the thing that I like to think about with student engagement is that when our children grow up and they become adults and they look back on their school years, they may not remember that cool math lesson that you did in the classroom, but they're certainly going to remember being part of the school play or drawing a really cool drawing or playing an instrument in the band or the orchestra. And so some of the things that we look at in terms of engaging kids and having that one thing that might be the connector for our students, that's all encompassed in this goal 3. And some of the things that we look at are the social emotional learning for our students in goal 3. We have implemented the Olveus anti-bullying curriculum in grades K through 8
Teachers have received training and put together cohesive plans for their schools. In 9th grade, we have a program called Building Assets, Reducing Risk that helps students to belong to a family in 9th grade. We've developed a wellness center at Monrovia High School that we're continuing to fund and to work with. At the elementary level, we have looked at our needs for mental health. We have one full-time counselor that we fund, and then we've put together a program called Nurturing Every Student Together, NEST. It's a multi-tiered system of support whereby we're looking at the needs of students, whether they're connecting students to school or whether they're more serious mental health issues. And we've been able to bring in counseling interns to all of our elementary schools. We've expanded our early college program. We have a school resource officer from the police department, and his job is not to arrest children or to put them in handcuffs, but his job is to help connect them to school and to help them to see the police department as a friendly thing and to counsel our kids and to help them proactively develop their ideals for life. So these, another big program that we have in our student engagement section is our AVID program. And so these are the programs that are in our Goal 3. So as we analyzed our LCAP for last year, where you see this chart, you see the equal signs. The funding levels have remained equal in all of these areas. There are two areas where the funding decreased. One was we decreased by a small margin the site support for the school plans because our enrollment is down a little bit and our funding is down in these funds. And the other area that we decreased a little more is the district professional learning, so conferences and the money for substitutes and having teachers out of the classroom. Those things have been reduced, and we eliminated the Summer Institute for teachers. We noticed that teachers, their attendance had begun to wane, and really the principals were wanting to have more input on what the teachers were learning for their sites. So this is how our budget kind of shook out. So the other thing that we have attached to our LCAP this year is our comprehensive support and improvement plan for Canyon Oaks High School. Canyon Oaks High School, our continuation high school, as like many of the continuation high schools in California, did not meet their graduation requirement, and so the state has identified them for additional support, which means that they were given a pretty large sum of money to expend in a year to put into place some engaging activities to help remediate that graduation problem that they were having. And Canyon Oaks does such a great job in taking care of kids and making sure that they do graduate. But they looked at it and they said, how can we get better? This is an opportunity for us. And so one thing that they are doing is they're taking the teachers and the administrators within the district to a 3-day conference that really looks at improving schools and looking at intentional leadership. And they plan to use that as a planning platform to plan their year next year, to have those deep conversations about closing the gap for every student. The other thing that they have done is they are purchasing a program called Edgenuity, that is a program that will help students to more quickly engage in recovering credits, because the students that come to them are deficient in credits. So that is a synopsis of our LCAP. Do you have any questions?
Mr. M.
Having attended multiple LCAP meetings, it's not a question, more of a comment, is I would like to thank the people who participated in all the meetings, who came up with ideas that help shape what it is that this community wants to spend its money on for the betterment of its students. It's not controversial, it is collaborative. Mm-hmm. And the
I think I want to thank you, Sue, and Amy Collier, who did a great job, particularly reaching out to other members of our community who normally don't attend meetings. And there weren't the numbers that we would like to have seen, but I think the people who took the time to come gained some knowledge about how the system works. And the more people that know how it works, the better the system will be. So I thank you for doing that. Again, thank you for the thought exchange. We're getting closer to getting the number of people's input into what it is that the community would like to see. And that's a very big deal to me. I know we've been working on that. This is a second year for thought exchange. That was born out of controversy, and so that I'm happy that it's moving in a positive direction, and the numbers are increasing for the information that's coming in. The $6 million is a lot of money. It's a tremendous amount of money, particularly when you think about what it is that we have to do with it. And the fact that we lost $400,000 of money is not very good. I think where the cuts are being made, it has the least amount of impact possible on the student who is in the subcategories what we're trying to target to raise the achievement level and equalize it and make it so that every student who comes through our system has the advantages of the person who's sitting next to them. So I think it does that in the least harmful way possible, given the fact that the cut has to be made. So, like I said, it's not a question, more of a comment. We have a nice size audience tonight, mostly of educators, and I appreciate you guys being here. I don't know if you know how the LCAP comes to life. LCAP comes to life because there are a number of people who take a considerable amount of time out of their personal lives to come in and have their voice being heard about how our kids are going to be funded, particularly those that are struggling, and we need to close that achievement gap. So thank you. Thank the audience for being here and sitting to that. Now imagine that, times it by 6, and an hour a crack, and now you have an LCAP meeting. So.
I'd like to piggyback on Mr. Hammond's comments, and thank you, Sue Kaiser. I was at all 6 of those meetings, both in English and in Spanish, and I did appreciate the collaboration between parents that were there, teachers, staff, and also community stakeholders who don't necessarily have kids in the schools anymore or never did, but they are very interested in what we're doing here. And this is a pot of money that is very critical to our district and how we spend it. So these meetings will happen again next year. I hope to see more parents in the audience. And again, they're in English and in Spanish. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Ms. Lockerbie.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser, for putting this together. When you were talking about the loss of the cuts that we're making in S&C, I think that it's important to explain to the people that don't know what S&C is, and who it tries to serve or to target, and why that money, why cuts were made, why so much of that money has vanished.
Great question, great comment. The S&C money is our supplemental and concentration money. We receive money in this category based on the number of unduplicated students, and they're unduplicated in 3 categories. Our students who are English language learners, foster and homeless youth, and our students who are classified as low socioeconomic. And our district sits at about 58% of those students. Because our enrollment has declined, and in the decline in enrollment, some of our unduplicated students have left also for whatever reason, that number, that percentage has decreased. Along with the decrease in enrollment is what resulted in the $450,000 reduction in our budget moving forward to next year. And then in terms of how we considered the cuts, we did want to stay as far away from the children as possible.
those programs that are our signature programs that students are so proud of and that are going to be able to launch them ahead, we didn't want one penny of that money to be shaved off of those programs, because that's what is making a real difference for some of our kids here in Monrovia.
Other questions or comments?
Sorry, did you have something else?
Go
You
ahead.
continue.
Okay, I have two more questions.
Okay, thanks.
The first one is, you mentioned the LCAP plan tries to provide for textbooks. I know that Santa Fe went 1-to-1. Does the Chromebook fall into that textbook category? Is that
The Chromebook isn't actually classified as a textbook at all. However, under what governs our law for textbooks is called the Williams Act, where we have to certify, the board certifies every year that we have a textbook in every student's hands. If we're 1-to-1 and the textbook is in the device, that can count as the textbook. So we don't have to have a physical textbook if every student has a device and the textbook is in the device.
But can the concentration grant money pay for the Chromebooks, since their textbooks are on them?
Yes, the LCAP money pays for the Chromebook because we've written our engagement goals to be that includes technology, because technology is very engaging for students. And so it pays for the technology. However, there's still a cost for the license of the textbook to have it downloaded onto the Chromebook, and it's almost the same cost as a hard textbook, as a book. The publishers charge per student.
Ms. Lockerbie, you had another question? Or maybe not. Did you have another question?
one last question? One of your goals is third grade literacy, and you talked about intervention to make sure that our third graders are literate. I wanted to ask, basically, when third grade starts. Does third grade start at the end, the completion of second grade, so that those second graders that have just completed second grade, are they able to be identified and get into summer school at the end of second grade?
We have several summer school programs, including, we have Camp Read a Lot that is for students going into 4th and 5th grade. And that was our first camp program that was intensive and fun and results orientated. After the success of that program, then we started Junior Camp Read a Lot for children that are entering 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. So we do have intervention programs for all of our grades, and then going into middle school, our soft spot was mathematics, and so we started a program called Camp Infinity that really used the same strategies for math. And then we noticed that we had an issue with our English language learners needing a double dose, so we started a program for those students in upper elementary and middle school for our English language learners to make sure they weren't losing the language over the summer.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Wante, go
Sorry.
right ahead.
Dr. Kaiser, if you could go to the slide that has our weaknesses, the dashboard slide. I just wanted to point out chronic absenteeism is we're rated very low in that area, meaning high absenteeism, and I just want to highlight that because it's kind of a double whammy. Not only is a student missing out on good education, which affects the other areas, but the district also misses out on much needed funding. And with declining enrollment being what it is, that absenteeism rate is critical for us. So I'm just putting the word out there. I'm a parent of a school-aged child. I understand they get sick. I understand things happen. But please, please plan those vacations during vacation time and not during the school year. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
And to that end, we are asking every school to, when they write their school improvement plan this year, that they write a piece of their plan, one of the chapters, on how they're going to address attendance in terms of proactively addressing the chronic absentee student. Chronic absenteeism are those students that are absent for a large percentage, more than 10% of the year. So we see that coming. It's not something that happens in June, it happens during the year. And so we are asking for a plan from our administrators and our leadership teams in our schools to take a look at who these students are and to put some proactive measures in place so that we can begin to really look at some research proven methods of closing that gap.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kaiser. You've put in so much work getting the public input, getting parent input, getting teacher and administrator input, and developed this plan for us this year. I don't know if everyone knows it or not, but a few years ago, the state decided they would change the way they funded the schools. They changed it to what they call a local control funding formula. And instead of tying our money to specific things that we had to do, they gave more control to the local board to define what some of that money would go for. As part of that, they required public input, and they also required a public hearing before the plan be approved. So with that, I would like to open a public hearing for the presentation of for the local control accountability plan revisions as have been presented here tonight. Are there any comments from the public on what you've heard here in the local control accountability plan? One, please come to the podium, state your name and make the comment.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Gonzalez. Hello, board members and members of the community, teachers. I am a parent of a first grader and eighth grader here at Monrovia Unified. I've sat in on the DAC and DLAC meetings here throughout the year. I do want to make a comment. I've brought it up when we've been at the meetings that our members, our parents that are parents of English learners have very limited assistance at these meetings. So not everyone's input was considered when this plan was put into place. Although we have had higher input, I feel like we're still not reaching a certain group in the community that this funding impacts primarily. So with that, I want to say that maybe you can take into account transportation for some of the students, specifically those at the high school level, who I see every morning walking from Shamrock all the way down to Colorado, who might not have transportation, so maybe that might be something to be considered in the plan for the future. I have made this comment before to be considered. Another thing is although we are working on it, we still need a little bit more support for those English learner students. I think some of the students that come on the bus might have higher attendance than those whose parents drop them off. So it's a big thing about transportation and just reaching out to the community. As our new doctor stated, our board has to represent our community, and we're not quite there yet, but I hope in the future we are. Have a good evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, does the staff have contact information? Okay, thanks so much. Other comments on the LCAP? Appreciate that input. Hearing no other comments, I will close the public hearing for the local control accountability plan, and that will be brought at a future meeting for approval. Moving on to business services, item 2, Ms. Wu.
Yes, good evening, President Mr. Glennon, Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Torosian, Cabinet, teachers, community member, and cabinets. And as you know that in the past 12 years, the district was a member of Joint Power Authority to finance delinquent property tax receivables. And our term for the 3 years end, I would like to submit a board for approval for another 3 years term, the membership for this JPA. The benefit of this JPA is because of the structure. All the penalty and interest we receive for this from this delinquent property tax will be quoted as a general fund, not as a regular property tax, which will offset the state aid. So this membership will definitely benefit the district regarding the fundings.
Do you have any questions or comments? No. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ms. Huff, would you please take the vote?
Board Member Hammond,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board President Gilliland.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Item 3, service agreement with Keygent LLC. Ms. Wu?
Yes, the U.S. Security and Exchange Committee Rule 15C2-12 and its amendment set forth the ongoing disclosure requirement as well as special event disclosure pertaining to the issuer of the securities. Currently, all the issue of the municipal obligation, including bonds, certificate of participation, and trust, are required to file continued disclosure annually reported through web-based electronic municipal market access, also called EMA systems. So this EMA website system maintained by the Municipal Security Rulemaking Board. We, as a community bond issuer, were required to submit the required disclosure annually. So the rule policy in regarding of reportable events change every year. In the last 10 years, the rule under this 15C2-12 has changed several times. So by the agreement with the Cajun ALSC, the company is expert in the bond market, and they will help the district to meet the government disclosure requirement, as well as any changes in regarding of the Rule 15C2-12 regarding special event.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ms. Huff, please take the vote.
Board Member Lockerbie,
Yes.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Hammond,
Yes.
Board President Gilliland.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Moving on to item 4, grant application for Monrovia High School front lawn. Ms. Wu, would you?
Yes, on board tonight, before the regular board meeting, we conducted the study section for the district application for the grant to help the MHS front lawn project. And we would like to get more input from the board and give us guideline for the next steps. This is a grant for allow the district apply the money to fund our MHS front lawn.
Currently, how much money do we have available left over from the insurance?
We have over $200,000, and a while ago, the board did instruct us to, if we are hydroseeded that front lawn, and we gave the board the estimate cost for around $70,000. So we have looking for different options, and tonight is one option for board to consider.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. We have 200,000 to apply to this, or 70,000 to apply to this?
Okay. While ago, we had a fire in front of the building, and then the total restore the project, we have over $200,000 left.
We have 200,000
That's
left for
correct. That money set aside for the future project, including of the MHS loan. This grant, there's a possibility if we apply, based on the consultants, their estimate, we can apply, the money we can apply between $500,000 to $700,000. That is for grant application.
We can apply for that much?
That's
500
correct.
to 700,000?
That's correct.
And do we have, does it have to be an even match?
I'm not aware even a match, and she mentioned that during study section they are required in kind. The in kind, including the staff time, including their time. I'm not aware of the detailed dollar amount, but I can go take a look again. And the position 69, which during the study section, she mentioned the deadline is the end of this month, but there's other grant also available. So this is a grant that is just due this at end of this month, but there's also another grant if the board are interested, we can also apply for.
In addition?
That's correct.
I want to go back to this $200,000 for a minute.
Mhm.
I think it's really important for the public to understand where the $200,000 came from.
Mhm.
It wasn't that, it was total restoration of the high school after the fire. And that included when we brought in all the equipment to start restoring everything. By bringing the equipment in to restore, we actually caused damage to the high school. And that is what the money was left over from. It wasn't because we were holding back on getting something restored at the school. It's that we had to have temporary housing on the tennis court, which caused damage to the tennis court. Then we had to have temporary housing of equipment and machinery all over the front of the school, which damaged all the work that was done from the bond that was passed to restore the high school. And so that all had to be all had to be put back together again as if the fire had not happened. The money that we have is money that's left over because we have not addressed how to repair the front of the school yet. And that is what we're trying to accomplish. I want folks to know where the money came from. It wasn't because we didn't do something in the restoration process of the fire. It's just we caused damage by having equipment repairing the school that needs to be repaired still. And now, since time has moved on and water restrictions are in place and water has become significantly more expensive, it doesn't make sense, perhaps, to put a grass there that you have to water, which is costing you a lot of money to water. We're looking at possibilities of going into decomposed granite, drought-resistant plants, and things like that. But the thing that we need to know, and we talked about during the study session today, is there is nothing that is a zero maintenance game. And so currently we spend X amount of dollars on maintenance of what it is that we currently have. We should not be putting something in place that's going to exponentially increase the cost of that maintenance. And that is the discussion. So I wanted to get everybody up to speed. That is what's happening with what we're looking at. The proposal was there's this Prop 68 money. The Prop 68 money allows you to apply for grants that leverages the money that you have and get money from the outside to, in essence, as much as double your money. So we heard a number this evening that to address the front of the school in a sensitive manner that is indicative of being water wise and plant natives and all these kind of things, it could be a $500,000 to $700,000 bill to do this. I'm not sure, I don't think any of us are, if that's a good number or not, but that was a number that was put out this evening. I do know that it's a little bit cheaper than the first one we heard when a person came to a meeting about a year ago and it looked like it was part of the Huntington Museum, which is like, whoa, that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to put a aesthetically pleasing front into our high school that the building is the focal point, not the shrubs. So that's where we're at. That's what all this is, to get everybody up to speed. But a question I have is, I think what you want from us is direction, so that you can talk to the folks, I forget the name of their company.
Amigo Las Rosas, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's Spanish name. Yes, yes. It's another name, yeah. I think we want to go ahead.
I think we want to.
Yes.
There you go. We want to move ahead. We want to be cautious not to be putting something in that's going to cost us more in the long run to maintain. Because, and that's where our MOT director came in. And we need to know from the MOT director how much time is being spent currently in the maintenance of what we currently have. And then if we add this other, how much time will be required to maintain it, given the fact that there's nothing that is a zero maintenance game. And are we going to put ourselves, and I don't mean today, I'm talking 10 years from now. Did we put ourselves in a position where we hamper the board that's sitting here, and it's like, boy, we'd like to be able to do this, but we can't because we have all these landscapers that we have to pay to take care of this thing that you did 10 years ago. And that's what I think we want to be cognizant and careful of.
And one more question came up with your discussion here than I asked in the study session, and the figure $200,000 available, which Rob's exactly right where that came from. We paid for everything. Insurance company reimbursed us on many things and then also gave us money to go to the restoration of the front of that. So this is what's left of that pot, and the only thing we have left to do is the restoration of the front. Now, are there any strings attached to that money that it, other than it needs to go for facilities at the high school? Is that $200,000 bound to the front lawn, or is that available for whatever we need facility-wise at the high school?
As far as I know, there's no string attached, because the insurance company reimbursed over $1 million, and then we use the majority money to remodel or restore our building. And the last project we have is the front lawn. And I think it's the board's decision to see which project or which we should spend the money for MHS.
The majority of it is just
Yes.
reimbursement for money we already spent as a district. So given that, we discussed the possibility of tabling this and having a special meeting sometime in the following week when we get the information on the maintenance costs of the proposal.
Sure.
Is that viable, or are we just basically saying no Prop 68 submission if we don't take action tonight, if we table this?
I got the impression from her that time was of the essence. We need some time to write this grant, and we need to get this information, exchange the information, and move forward as soon as possible.
I am fine with moving along as long as we put a poison pill clause in there that says if there's strings attached that come from the Prop 68 that we're not comfortable with, that we can just say no thank you and walk away. I would think that that's fine. That shows our interest in it, but also gives us reserve for our concerns that we may be getting ourselves into something that we can't afford in the future. So
I also think we need to cap this. I'm not comfortable with
Me
5 to
neither.
700,000. That's a really big range, and if we only have 200,000 available, and we had the discussion of the matching, whether it's in kind or their hours or whatever, I think it's important for us to put a ceiling on that and not leave it so open.
What would we do with the rest of the money?
Oh, there are
it's
hundreds of
endless.
thousands of facility
Endless.
needs at the high school.
I thought it could only go to the front lawn.
No, and Ms. Wu just said it can
Doesn't
go
have
for
to
any
just go to the
facility
front
need at the high school, yeah.
Can it go to? It can't go to another school though.
It's better leaving high school because that part of money is as the balance from the 5 project. But there's no string attached, so it's on the board direction, I think.
I think it's. I think since it's reimbursement money for facilities at the high school, we would open ourselves to some real possible problems if we didn't spend it for facilities at the high school. Now, I have no question that it doesn't have to all be spent on the front lawn, but we do need to make sure some of this money is spent on the front, because what's there now needs to be fixed.
I am definitely interested in seeing a real plan that is doable. The other one was just pie in the sky. It's one of those, if you had unlimited money, this is what you would do, which is, that's crazy talk. We do have limited money. So I like your idea of putting a cap onto it and seeing what we can get delivered in something. So we can take a vote on this tonight and march forward if we put the provision in it that says if there is doubt, we can get out. Didn't mean to be a poet on that thing, but it's a kind of work.
Right, and that is something that came up in the study session, is that even if they go forward with the grant and we are awarded the grant, we can still pull out at that point. But the main thing is getting a plan in place and giving them a ceiling to work with.
I would
formulate that
I would
plan.
very strongly recommend we don't apply for a grant and then not take it when it's offered, because we're going to want more grants in the future, and we don't want to poison that well.
I also don't want to undertake this huge process in front of our beautiful high school and have it not be worthwhile and meaningful. I mean, the grounds need to reflect the building, which reflects the community, which reflects the mountains behind it. I mean, everything about that is beautiful. I don't want to put a cap on it and say, I don't want to spend all of this money and do a, not have the grounds look as
the problem with not saying this is what we have to spend is you will get this grandiose plan that is like, wow, I really want it, but I can't afford it. So here, take this back and now go redraw it and hand it to me again. So that's the problem. We need to direct it for, this is how much money we think we can afford to spend.
We only have as much money as we have,
right.
So they can't, do $1 million project, of course.
But that's the thing. They gave us a range of $500,000 to $700,000. If we say $500,000,
and that's a reduction from the first one we saw.
And if we say 5, I want to make sure that 500,000 is, it's beautiful. I want to make sure that it's beautiful.
I just can't imagine that $500,000 worth of landscaping wouldn't be beautiful.
Well,
I'm thinking they can.
Since it's a grant, I hate to put a cap on it because of this. It's a new way of thinking about landscaping. It is, and for us to be a leader in that new and better direction in drought, water-starved California, it would be good for us to be a leader in the business of schools changing their landscape to more drought-resistant landscaping. If they want, if we can get grants to do it, fine. I would like to limit what our liability as a district is. And I hate to see us spend more than $50,000, because we can put lawn back in there for less than $50,000. And I would hate for us to obligate ourselves to more maintenance costs in the future than we would have if we put grass back. So if we put those two limitations on, a $50,000 cap on our expenditure and no more maintenance costs in the future than what we would expend if we had grass, I could see going forward with this tonight.
In the meeting this evening, when she asked about, there was a question, and the question was, what would our contribution be? She said $50,000.
Right.
Because they have a formula that calculates so much time for each profession that counts as an in-kind. And all those hours per day count as real money into the project. So I'm with you. I think if our contribution is $50,000, we're looking at the project because it's coming off of but I also want to know what the strings are that are attached to Prop 68, because that's critical. If we're using somebody else's money, then usually somebody else wants to be able to participate, and we need to know what that is.
I think the strings are water conservation.
No,
within
usually
the-
it's access. And that's what I want to make sure of. If we're
But
using,
But Prop 68 is about, isn't it about the water conservation?
Yeah, but
68?
there's always strings attached. That's more than just water conservation. It has to be public act.
and the public knows this too. I want to do this one more time, go back to a little bit of history lesson. The reason this all came up is because everybody was asked to turn all their water off because of the drought. Okay, well, everybody's yard is turning brown except for the school district's yards, which we're out there watering every day. And the people whose yards are turning brown, they're paying the bill for the green lawn across the street at the school. It didn't seem to make a lot of sense, and that's the reason why this all started was, let's be sensitive to what everybody else is going through. We're using their money to do it. And so that's how it started. That's how we got to here.
So would it be possible for somebody to make a motion?
I'll
that
make a
we
motion
approve
that,
this with
yeah,
the 50?
I'll make a motion, we go
Okay.
forward, limiting our exposure to $50,000, and that there is a way for us to get out of the deal if we don't like the deal. So I don't know how to
Particularly
phrase
the
that.
maintenance.
The maintenance, particularly the
maintenance
maintenance.
costs not rise.
So if they're in the process of doing that and they bring it back to us and we hear something that we don't like, that's in Prop 68, we can go, hey, that was real fun, but we're out.
Can I ask a question after he's made a motion?
Sure.
Usually you have to either second it or let it die, and then you can make another motion, usually. Or I can just take it away.
I want some clarity on what your definition of maintenance is, because there's long-term and short-term cost. And it's very easy to get on a mower and mow the lawn, and we already have the mowers and we already have maintenance and they're already familiar with mowing a lawn. But in the long run, it's not cheap maintenance because it's not efficient. Because grass in Southern California is not efficient environmentally. So I hear a concern
I'm
about
going to retract
maintenance.
my motion.
Okay.
Okay, and the question is, and I don't disagree, you're exactly right. That's why it's incumbent upon the MOT director to bring back to us what it is that we're spending right now, because they can break it down to hours worked. This is what the hours worked that we're spending right now. This is what we anticipate the hours worked will be
That
if
should
you
be
do
part of
this.
the motion. That needs to be part of the motion.
What needs to be part of the motion?
The
Right.
report from the MOT.
Well, yeah, it's part of the poison part.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the cost.
Can I take a stab at it again?
Because.
Well, what's included in-
But labor cost.
What's included in the maintenance includes the water to maintain
Right,
it.
exactly.
It includes the personnel to maintain it.
Right, the time.
It includes the supplies to maintain it and equipment, and it includes the administration of that maintenance.
So I don't, be
Plus-
clear,
plus
anything that's 10 years
deferred
from now is gonna
maintenance.
cost more than today, that's for
Right.
sure.
But if we're
Yeah,
doing something that is California native, environmentally friendly, my thought is it's not going to necessarily cost more than today. That lawn costs more than,
That's what we need to find out.
Right.
I am not a horticulturalist at all. I don't know. I just go out and pick the thing off my tree and go, oh, I got an orange, this is great. I couldn't begin to tell you if it's the right soil for the orange or not, don't know. But we do have people here that can answer that question for us, and that, we need that. But if we want to get involved in this Prop 68 thing, we should probably allow them the opportunity to get writing on the grant, since it needs to be turned in before the end of the month.
right,
So,
And in general, I agree with your thought that it should be cheaper until you get to the litter part. And I would like to.
What part?
Litter.
letter?
Litter. It costs a lot of money to pick up litter from
Mulch,
from
mulch.
from mulch,
Or a bush.
from the bushes. And if this kind of landscape has been put in other high schools, I would like to know if their cost of picking up litter every day. I mean, the last thing in this world we want is to have a litter box in front of our high school. So we want that to be at a minimum. So have the other high schools experienced and ownership and lack of litter? Or have they experienced the kids do what kids do as they walk into school?
Not just kids.
And you're right, it's not just kids, you're right. I think of mostly kids going in, but a lot of people do that. So I just think that the total maintenance cost includes litter, it includes water, it includes all those things, and I saw Fernando shaking his head. Yeah, so
Let me take a
those are
stab
the
at-
numbers we need to get back.
Let me take a stab at this motion. I move that we approve, where are we here?
That we authorized
The authorized, the grant application with our cost, with cash not to exceed 50,000, a report from the MOT director on maintenance costs, and the demands of the Prop 68 grant.
Be provided to the board.
And to the board before
submission.
approval, right. So that'll be with us next, in 2 weeks.
They need it before 2 weeks, though. They
All
need
right.
it-
No, we're gonna say, go ahead and move. Go ahead forward.
Don't we need an MOU?
No. Go ahead forward. We'll get all this part back before the next meeting, and then we can see it, and we don't like it, we can kill it.
Well, and they'll need to bring us an
Right.
MOU to move forward anyway.
Right.
Okay, that's the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
All right, Ms. Huff, please take the vote.
Board Member Travanti,
Yes.
Board Member Hammond,
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie,
As a member of the community that walks by the high school every single morning and every single evening, I would love to see a slightly greater investment put into the lawn, a slightly greater financial investment, because I think it's beautiful. I think the school is beautiful, and I think the community deserves a little bit more. So I'm going to say no because of the $50,000 contribution.
Board President Gilliland,
I will say yes, and we have the option later to up that amount. All right,
motion carries 3-1.
all right. Can we move on to the proposed budget for the 2019-20?
Board President Gillen, just as a point of clarification, they also mentioned that they would like a letter. For part of the requirement of the grant is to provide a letter saying that they are okay to move forward. If they need,
I think that's the vote.
yeah, so I
That
can
was
write a
the
letter
vote.
to that effect.
Yeah,
correct?
I would guess it probably needs those caveats in there, but yeah. All right, Ms. Wu.
Actually, what we're going to get started here with our proposed budget and provide an overview, and I believe that everybody will play a role, and I think we'll just kind of allow for cabinet members to jump in at specific slides as to present. As you recall, in December, we submitted a qualified budget. And since then, we have been in the process of reducing our expenditures and trying to figure out a better way, because we needed to come to a day where we submitted a positive budget for the district to the county, that 3-year budget. And the process that we used was simply rethinking how we do work, redesigning some of our tasks, and trying to really be conscious of our resources and utilizing them to the best of our ability. And of course, reducing costs. In doing so, there was a process, identifying essential questions, making sure that we were consolidating services, eliminating redundancies, maximizing our categorical funding sources, making sure that student achievement was at the core of our work, and making sure that we are protecting the priorities of the board and community as we move forward. Of course, it's always important to be in compliance with federal and state mandates, and so we're going through that process.
When considering position control, we focus on several aspects to realize potential savings. One, reviewing vacancies and determining if they need to be filled. If they do, when and how. Can we promote from within, or do we need to post the positions and attract potential employees and candidates from the outside? Do we need to replace the vacancies with a full-time equivalent or 100% position, or at a reduced position, whether it's 50%, 70%, et cetera? We also consider staffing ratios on both certificated and the classified side. In addition, we do have an administrative to teacher ratio. Keeping in mind that declining enrollment does not equate for a dollar for dollar reduction, but there are possibilities that may occur.
We took some immediate action, including reducing district office department expenditures, identifying other legal firms with some lower costs, reallocate staffing, and becoming very conservative in our staffing projections. The reductions in the LCAP process or in the LCAP budget, I think Dr. Kaiser referenced earlier. And we also reviewed our travel and conference expenditures as well as our consultant agreements to make sure that everything we do has a purpose and a goal, and to make sure that the cuts are away from our people and our students. We also put into place a new process for travel and conference approvals, ensuring that they are in line with the goals of the schools or the district. With our workers' compensation program, there was a bit of a cost savings. We had estimated a larger expenditure. That was helpful. We will be reducing the district department office supplies by 20% beginning next year. And as Dr. Jackson just mentioned, we'll be closely monitoring our staffing ratios and retiree replacements, making sure that we are fully utilizing all of our resources.
So here's the budget assumption we use to develop a 19 and 20 adult budget, and the cost of living adjustment fluctuate every year, and then STIRS district contribution. We see the changes decrease compared with the earlier proposal, and the PERS also increase every year. And the routine restraint maintenance is the money we are required to set aside for our district-wide facility maintenance. And the change is the next year originally proposed 2% is increased to 3%. So these are the revenue projection for next school year. This is unrestricted. We break down by each category. And the transfer out is transfer to the 18-19 transfer to the adult education program for $250,000, and the $100,000 to deferred maintenance because of change for the contribution for next year. So we will eliminate $100,000 transfer to the deferred maintenance and continue the adult education program transfers. So those are the multi-year projection for our revenues. This is for the multi-year projection for unrestricted general fund. Starting this year and for the 4 years, and we begin to the beginning balance and the projection of revenue expenditure. The highlight portion is since our expenditure more than the revenue we received, so the district continue deficit spending current year and the next 3 years. So here's how the district expenditure allocated for each area, and 84% of our budget go to the personnel, including salary and benefit, and the 2% go to the books and supplies, and the 12% is the district operation, and the others is the COP certification of participation and the capital outlay. The other one is the contribution for the miscellaneous programs such as the special education and the deferred routine restraint maintenance program. So those are the other 3 fund for the adult education, child development, and food service. We project that we'll have a positive funding balance for each of the program for next year.
And just a quick overview of our budget challenges. Our declining student enrollment, this is information that is not new, but we want to make sure to include it. The declining student attendance rates, our increasing special education costs, our increasing pension costs, and the lack of additional funding for our facilities, and the increasing health insurance costs. One of the things I want to make sure to note is Ms. Wu mentioned that we are deficit spending, and that is something we have been addressing. One of the challenges is those increasing pension costs were a surprise to us about, was it 5 years ago, Ms. Wu?
Yeah.
When prior to that, our pension costs were at a stable 8%, and we just noticed that they are in the 20s now with CalPERS, and in the mid-teens as a percentage of salary for STIRS. So those are required, and certainly no budget has increased in order to cover those increased pension costs. So that deficit spending has really been a way of life for the last 5 years. A trip down memory lane for our MUSD enrollment history. In 16-17, we experienced a great drop in our enrollment. And at that time, we made a decision to offer an early retirement incentive. You know, the benefit of that is that we're able to retain as many of our employees as possible. This is from certificated employees, and replace it with younger teachers. Of course, the loss is that institutional knowledge and that experience and that expertise of our more seasoned teachers. However, it was also an opportunity for some who were really able to get started on life after full-time employment and experience that journey. But our priority was to protect our people, and better through retirements and natural attrition than anything else.
Brief review of our total compensation package. The district makes employee contributions in 2 specific areas, reflected here in salary and health and welfare benefits. As you can see overall, on the salary side, the district has contributed almost 7.5% over the last couple of years. And then health and welfare, where the district has a robust contribution, where the district is mostly taking on the increased costs from the insurance carriers, knowing that employees do make some type of contribution at approximately 24.64. So when you look at the total compensation package over the last couple of years, the district's had an impact to the budget of 26, roughly 8%. Dr. Tarosian mentioned the increased cost due to special education. Just based on their enrollment in the last 3 years, we've increased on average of about 27 students per year, starting in 15-16. And in addition to that, you can see that the special ed expenditures are far outpacing the funding revenue.
So some of the things that we've been doing is we've been investing in our excellent programs and creating signature programs in many of our schools. Our dual immersion Mandarin and Spanish programs have really taken off, and we have waiting lists in several of the classes for our dual immersion classes. We have coding and computer science in 4 of our schools. Mayflower, Plymouth, Santa Fe, and the high school, as an articulated program that starts in kindergarten and goes all the way through the end of high school. Our early college program, where students can earn dual credit high school credit and college credit while they're at Monrovia High School. We have our third cohort starting in the fall, so that means we have 30 students who have completed their freshman and sophomore year of high school, and they have already accrued 1 full year of college credit under their belt that is transferable to a junior college or to a California State University or one of our private schools in the system. Many of these courses are also transferred to a UC college. We also have our career technical education with our career pathways at the high school and at Mountain Park and Canyon Oaks, and the adult education program, where we have students that are earning credit and earning different certifications in technology and in sports medicine. And we also have been intentional about our integration of the arts, kindergarten through grade 12. So in terms of attracting students to our district, we have been mindful about developing some of these engaging programs through the vehicle of our local control accountability plan. Another thing that we've been mindful about is pursuing alternative funding. The state gives us a certain amount of funding, and then through the hard work of our staff and people that work in our district, we have been accruing some additional funding. In the area of career and technical education, we have a grant that has been funding our pathways, the digital media pathway, our technology pathway and certifications, and the new medical science pathway. We have developed a relationship with the Coatson Foundation and received many grants in our district, in our elementary schools, to mentor our teachers and to also provide professional development for our teachers. So far, the continuation grants have totaled more than $60,000 for professional development. So some of what we lost in our supplemental and concentration funds, we've been able to look for some other funding sources to backfill the training for our teachers. We've also received some social emotional learning grants from Hazleton, the Olveus anti-bullying program, and a program called Building Assets, Reducing Risk, which is at our high school serving our 9th grade students.
With technology projects, our biggest source of alternative funding has been E-rate. We're working on finishing up a wireless project that was over $700,000, of which the district's paying less than $200,000 for. We also finished a firewall project. The tricky part with firewalls is that it provides security and it provides connectivity. E-rate only pays for connectivity, so we don't get the full discount, but we were able to apply for E-rate discount such that part of that project was covered. And very rarely, I think this is the only time I've ever seen, at least with me in these shoes, seeing Microsoft ever kicked in any dollars for any projects I've worked on. So we also had Microsoft kick in $30K for a project that we are currently finishing up. And we will continue to look for these alternative fundings. Very recently, the board approved a contract to apply for E-rate funding for a system that optimizes our bandwidth that we may or may not need, but to apply for it so that in looking in the future, if we do need it, we can purchase it and have it covered under E-rate.
So we also advocate for additional funding through the state and the federal legislature. And we also try to expand the international students program. We have already issued 2 international students, and one is they are on the way to apply visa, and they already paid the tuition for come to the Monrovia High School at the 9th grade. And we also reached by our city, Duwadi, our neighbor. They would like us to provide us their summer school. I think the city provides some summer youth program, and they would like us to provide the transportation for them. So as board recall, when we ask board approval to purchase 5 buses, one of the use of new bus is they provide transportation for the neighbor school district as well as the city, and this looks like be realized soon. And their proposed want to starting the transportation in June 19 because they gave us a schedule late. So most likely we would like the board to ratify the MOU on June 26 board meeting. So that is the various program the district looking for additional revenue.
Ms. Wu, let's go back to that a new item right there, because it was an opportunity that we were presented with very late to essentially be that entity with which the city of Duarte contracts to provide transportation when we're not using it. Is that accurate?
That's correct, because in the summer, when we have our summer school, but we also have the ability to provide additional transportation for other entities to cover, not only cover cost and then have a way to generate additional funding and fully use our new buses.
Is the cost of wear and tear going to be covered by what they're going to pay us to use the transportation?
That
Because
will be
those are our new buses or our old buses?
It's the new buses that will be in the MOU. We will submit for board approval in the next board meeting. It will be considered in the entire MOU in regarding the cost.
The cost of the wear and tear.
That's correct. The cost will be the staffing time, staff our school bus driver to do the transportation, their time, and the cost of wear and tear and the fuel of the bus.
So when we first purchased these new buses or contracted with these new buses, one of the thoughts was that we had discussed that it would become something with which we could generate revenue as part of that discussion. This opportunity came to us very late, which is why it's a surprise to the board, and it should be a surprise. Because, yeah, this is, you didn't miss a memo.
Thank you.
No.
No. So bringing it up right here, we'll provide details as soon as we receive them, because those are in no way clear at this point. So once we receive those details, we'll provide them to you for your review, and any concern should be forwarded to us immediately so that we back out of an agreement before making it.
That's correct. We only know the schedule right now. We are working on an MOU. So once we finalize it, we'll submit for the board to review.
Make sure they're paying our administrative costs too.
Sure.
Please.
Here are the things we were able to avoid this year, and we hope to avoid next year as well and ongoing. But these are, if you just look at districts, neighboring districts, area, school funding has been a problem for almost every district around, with more qualified budgets being submitted to LACO. So pick up a paper and you'll see what some of these reductions have been, and they are not reductions that any of us would like to consider seriously. However, and we are hopeful that the governor's budget will provide us with a little more relief than we currently have. Having $2,000 or a little over $2,000 as an ending budget in 21-22 is really not the most robust planning, but it does keep us in the black, and it does allow us to stay away from some of these more dramatic cuts. And again, we want to make sure that the cuts are away from our people and our students.
Just a word of caution. You said governor's budget. I don't have much faith that the governor's budget's going to get passed this year. So it's going to be what the legislature passed. So I don't want to. I hope we don't rely too much on what numbers the governor put in there, because I hear a lot of noise about what the legislature is going to accept and not. So.
Right again, President Gilliland. It won't be the governor's budget. In fact, especially with special education funding, the legislature just pushback and has modified that considerably.
Yeah, one of the problems we have is we always say, oh, we've got this much by the governor's budget, but then we hear very little about it when the legislature actually cuts it and we have to reduce budget for that revision.
We do know that the budget that passes will have some additional funding to special education. We're hoping that we are part of, we receive some additional funds. And that the state plans to contribute more funds to CalPERS. At least that's been part of the discussions, and seems to have some bipartisan support. So we are hopeful for those. But because we haven't seen the specifics, we haven't been able to include any of those in our budget.
Okay, our next step is the board will approve a 1920 LCAP and propose the budget on June 26th board meeting, and the district will revise our budget right after the governor signed the state budget for 45 days. That's the ethical requirement, and then we are working on the year-end closing, and we will submit for board approval in September.
Questions, Mr.
There is
Allen?
nothing more riveting than a budget report. If anybody suffers from insomnia, you can have my copy. Interesting reading.
Other comments? I've got a couple of questions.
I just wanted
But
to
go ahead.
thank Ms. Wu for sitting with me and explaining some of this. It's daunting. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of commas and a lot of acronyms, and I have a hard time understanding it, and I don't want anyone to think that this is the only information that we get and we just shake our heads and move on. We've all studied it, and we've all been given the budget, and we've all, some of the board has had lots of experience with this, and Ms. Wu has been kind enough to sit with me and help explain things, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that we've reviewed this and gone over this behind the scenes for a while. And I wanted to thank you for your attention to all of this.
Could you go back to the slide called multi-year projections unrestricted general fund, please? That one. That shows between 2021 and 21-22, our expenditures are actually going to decrease. How is that possible?
My guess is one of the reasons maybe this year we have election, and then every other year we have election. So 2020 when we put $100,000 for election cost. So 21, 22 we don't have election costs. So that's my initial response. But I can go to more detail why the 21, 22 cost is lower than 2021.
Yeah, could you please do that, because from
Yeah.
1920 to 2021, our expenses go up by 1.6 million, and then to 21-22 they go down by.
Yeah, so for the 1920, 2021, the one of the reason expenditure is increased because our MOU with Teachers Association only 2 years. So 2021 did not including the MOU, so class size will be increased. So which means that there's a possibility we will. That's correct. Will be decreased. So the staffing will be increased.
Yeah, if you could please look at that, because
Yes.
Our revenue only goes up $1 million, and typically, you know, just the inflation costs, the utilities, salaries, benefits, typically go up.
Yeah.
If you'd look at that, I'd
Yeah,
appreciate
we're also
it.
including the textbook adoption also in 2021, so that's another impact.
Okay.
Yeah,
That may
so we
be
talk about election, textbook adoption, the MOU go away, so that's why. But I will give you a detailed breakdown in this Friday's update.
Appreciate it. I'd just like to point out to the public that
Yeah.
that revenue under expenditures shows you which direction the budget's going. The legislature talks about increasing funding, but they don't talk about increasing funding relative to expenditures. At least they don't do it. I mean, they haven't. So I hope they decide to fully fund our schools and stop this business of our revenue is less than what our expenditure has to be year to year. Even on, go over 2 slides now forward, adopted budget, other funds. Even in our other funds, we're looking at more costs, higher costs, and not higher revenue. So every place we look, that our budget gets tighter and tighter. Then if you'd go over to MUSD enrollment history, 2 more, I think, there you go. It would be interesting to me, I don't want to take a lot of staff time to do it, but if somebody could be assigned to find out, there are agencies that keep track of the average rental costs in Monrovia.
Mm-hmm.
It would be really good to know how our drop in enrollment relates to the increased price of rent in this community. I've got a feeling with the big rent increases that are coming down this year, we may see an even bigger drop than that next year. Because my understanding is there's been some really big rent increases here this year. So it would be good to look at that trend and see if if part of it we can define by that relationship. All right. I also wanted to point out under special education, there may be people out there looking at special education for 18-19 and saying you only were funded 7,000, you expended, 7 million, and you expended 13 million. What kind of management is that? Doesn't seem to make sense that we get 7 million and we spent 13 million. Well, the laws that govern special education says we will meet those students' needs. No leeway. We do an individual education plan. Whatever those needs are, the district is legally required to meet them. And so if we have to take money from the general fund to do that, we're required to do that. And I don't begrudge any child what they need, especially the special education one. But the fact is the law put that into place. And when they did it, Congress said they would fund 30% of the costs. 30 or 28? I don't know. It was a fairly
40.
big number. Was it 40? Oh, I'm under. It's 40, and they're only sending us about 8%. So Congress passed that mandate, and there's what results in Monrovia, a $6 million difference in what money we get and what money we have to spend for that. So you can call it bad management, but I don't believe it's on this board's part. I believe it's the way Congress passed that law. And like I say, I don't begrudge any special education student the education they deserve. My point is they need to fund all students that way. I guess that's my questions and comments. Any more? All right, then, as I discussed a while ago with the LCAP, there's a requirement for a public hearing for the proposed adopted budget, so I'd like to open the public hearing for that budget. Do I have any comments on it? Seeing, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. And move on to collective bargaining agreement, health and welfare. Mr. Jackson.
Board President Gilliland.
Dr. Jackson, I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
a few years behind here.
Board President Gilliland, members of the board, Dr. Tarosian, members of the community. The Board of Education is requested to approve health benefits agreement for employees for the 1920 school year. The CSEA, MTA, and district negotiating teams have reached agreement to health benefits for the 1920 school year. The district health insurance includes medical, dental, vision, and life. The average medical insurance premium will increase, as you saw recently from the budget presentation, 3.84% effective October 1st, 2019. CSEA, MTA, and the district agree that the current health contribution formula, including current employee contributions, will remain in place for the 1920 school year. The estimated maximum district contribution for health benefits will increase approximately $250,000. The increased cost was included in the 1920 budget.
Questions or comments? Ms. Huff, would you please take the vote?
Well, wait, I'll make a motion.
Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? Sorry.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, now, Ms. Huff, would you take the vote? Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Board Member Hammond?
Yes.
Board Member Lockerbie? Board Member Travanti?
Yes.
Board President Gilliland?
Yes.
Motion carries
Moving on to
4-0.
pending board issues, Dr. Therosian?
With the one addition of Edgenuity, everything else seems to be going according to our outline.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business. The next two board meetings are June 26th and June 24th, July 24th. Only one meeting in each of those months, and those will be at 7 p.m.
I do have a thing for new business, please.
All right.
I
New
know
business.
we were just talking about a budget that is out of whack, but we need some new ideas about how to derive value here. I would like to get a staff report at the earliest convenience that would show next summer that we do enrichment summer school at the high school, not just credit recovery, and see what the cost would be on that and the benefit that can be derived from it.
So we'll put that under pending board issues.
Okay, or just we can get a staff report on it in July. I don't want to do it before the budget's over.
Okay. All right. Summer school, June 13th to 11th. Other dates to calendar, the first day of school. We just barely got out, Dr. T. But the first date of school is August 14th, and the state of the school's address is going to be October 15th at 7 p.m. at Monrovia High School, so you might want to put that on your calendars. With that, I will adjourn this board meeting at 9:14.